Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, where we help new and beginning teachers navigate through those crazy first years of teaching so you can maintain your sanity and personal life. Here's your host, Kim Lepre.
Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kim Lepre, and this is the podcast for new and beginning teachers who don't want to just survive those first few years, but actually thrive. Today on episode 61, I'm answering a common listener question, and I actually recently received it from Melissa. Hi, Melissa. Thank you for sending me that question. And because I'm asked this so much, I thought it's time. It's time to have a podcast episode on this. And the question is, how do I know if teaching is really for me? Now, this question is on the minds of new teachers all year round, but especially at the end of the school year. This is when you start wondering if your contract will be renewed, if you even want to come back, whether you can survive another year. Did you make a huge mistake? You know what I mean? Those types of questions. And I totally get it. There's a sense that you're almost done. You're exhausted and depleted, and so you wonder if you can endure this year after year after year. And it almost feels like if there's any time to get out, it's now, right? Right when you're starting. So I definitely understand and have had these thoughts myself. And while I want everyone to stay in the teaching profession, since I do find it really rewarding, I know that it's not right for everyone. I've met many teachers who wish they'd gotten out sooner, but now they've invested so much time and they're so far into their career, they feel like it's too late for them to switch careers. So today I want to have an honest conversation about some factors to think about if you're questioning whether or not teaching is for you. Another podcast that you also want to listen to that has admittedly similar information is episode 20, where I ask questions to help you determine if you have the right mindset to survive as a teacher. But before I dive into this, I want to let you guys know about something that is going on at my school. So I don't know what your school is like, but our school is so big in terms of population, and we don't have enough classrooms. We even have portable classrooms. And so there are several teachers every single year who have to travel, meaning that they have multiple classrooms. And it usually ends up being whoever comes last to the school. So if somebody retires or leaves, then one of those teachers has dibs on a classroom all to themselves. But even those who have their own classroom, they still have to share it when they have their planning period. And so a lot of times it's brand new teachers who have to travel. And this is a really, really tough thing because, you kind of envision having your own classroom when you start out and maybe even how you're going to decorate it and just having this space of your own. And you're stuck in somebody else's room feeling like you're intruding upon them. You don't even know them. And you're still trying to figure out teaching. And they may even stay in the room during their planning period and watch you. So it can just be definitely a not ideal situation. And it's something that's bothered me for a while because I don't necessarily like how new teachers just kind of get stuck with whatever. A lot of times you guys also get stuck with these really strange teaching assignments, especially if you teach at the secondary level. Whatever classes aren't taken up by a teacher on site, you kind of get the leftovers. So you might have like Math 7, Math 8, Math 8 Accelerated, multiple preps is what we call it. And so you just kind of get whatever you can get so you can get your foot in the door. So I'd been thinking about it recently, and I don't really like the idea of not having your own space if you're new. And one of the teachers that I mentor, she has to travel to 3 different classrooms. Actually 4 if you count advisory. And so I decided that I'm going to give up my classroom and give it to her. And so this means that I am going to start traveling next year. And it wasn't an easy decision necessarily, but at the same time, I thought, why not? I'm definitely not someone who decorates her classroom very much. I do have some, English related stuff on the walls. But other than that, I don't do a whole lot to my classroom. And I can pretty much teach anywhere. I am pretty light in terms of what I use. I have my laptop and I have some materials. I have my iPad. But in general, I don't need all the storage and all the space. In fact, in my classroom, I don't have a lot of storage. So I decided to give it up, and I actually feel really good about it. And the reason why I wanted you guys to know about this is that if you remember, I've created the end of the year Sanity Saver course to help you guys so that the craziness of this time of year won't taint how you feel about the whole year. You know how sometimes one experience can just make the whole thing seem bad. I mean, think about it. You guys have survived so far, and you've earned the right to walk out that door on that last day stress-free and relaxed. Well, one of the modules in this course has to do with taking an inventory of your room and supplies so that you know what you have, what you need to replenish, what you maybe need from the school, and where everything is. And packing up your room is a really important step because often the custodial staff, they do deep cleanings over the summer. So if you have linoleum, they'll probably like sweep it and mop it and then wax it. And if you have carpets, they'll probably vacuum it and shampoo it. And usually in this process, they take everything out of your classroom, or they just kind of stack everything as much as they can so that they can cover as much of the surface of the ground as possible. So what this means is that if you leave a bunch of stuff sitting out, they'll do their best to put it back, but it's definitely not going to be how you had it before. So when you walk in the door after summer, it can be like, oh my goodness, someone broke into my classroom. And really, it was just the custodians doing an amazing job of making your classroom just absolutely clean. If you want to make sure that your stuff is exactly where you left it, or that you know where everything actually is, then you have to take inventory and pack your stuff so that when you come back, you're not going to be overwhelmed by the chaos. And as you can imagine, this particular module in the course is important for me right now. I mean, I'm not going to have the same storage that I had before. So I'm going to have to be very intentional about what goes with me and what I'm going to pack in the bin and just put in my garage, because I don't have anywhere at school to put it. And I've sat down and thought about what I'll need, and I'm going to get a rolling cart, and it's basically going to be essential supplies like my laptop charger and my iPad charger, pens, tissue, sanitizer. You get the point. And thank goodness I already have my inventory from previous years so that I don't have to think of this again every year. So I want to share this module with you so that you can also benefit from it, even if you're not changing classrooms. So if you go to teachersneedteachers.com/EOTY, I have a free preview of the lesson as well as also a free resource that goes with that lesson, and you can download it. So you can kind of get a sample of what the entire course is like. And of course, there's no obligation for you to purchase the course. The preview is free. The download is free. But I'm hoping that if there's one thing that you do before you kick off your summer, it's taking inventory and organizing your things so that you can relax knowing that everything is going to be where you left it. And where you left it is packed up. So go to teachersneedteachers.com/EOTY and you'll see a button for a free preview at the top.
Hey y'all, I'm Casey Bell of the Google Teacher Tribe podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual hosts. Make sure you check out all the other great podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com and get ready because the learning begins in 3, 2, 1.
As I mentioned in the introduction, this is a good time to ask yourself if the teaching profession is right for you. Sometimes student teaching or that first year will be that crucial time when you start feeling like something just isn't right, or maybe it's a little further down, like 6 or 7 years. Now, in the beginning, it could also just be fear and not that you should leave the teaching profession. In any case, I want us to be introspective together and be honest about some answers to questions that I'm going to ask you. And just a heads up, for a lot of these questions, I also have episodes dedicated to the answers, and I do a deep dive on those. So I'll mention the episode numbers as well as link to them in the show notes so that, especially if you're driving or your hands are occupied, you can come back to it later. You don't have to click on the website. So the first question is, do you truly enjoy being around kids? Why? Were you like a camp counselor and thought that was fun? Did you maybe do tutoring one-on-one and you thought that was really fulfilling? And then when things weren't going well, did you still love it, or were you just really relieved that it was over? Now, these questions are important because teaching isn't anything like being a camp counselor or a tutor. You have much more pressure, and you have an obligation to get your students to acquire an insane amount of knowledge and skills in less than a year. Remember when you had that one kid who acted out in camp? Imagine at least 5. So how are you going to handle that? Do you just have a natural knack for striking up conversations with kids where they're not trying to escape? And you know what I mean? Sometimes you'll talk to kids and they'll sort of kind of face you, but not, but they're trying to run away and they're just answering. So can you talk to them without them feeling awkward? Or do you feel awkward when you're one-on-one with them? I mean, maybe it depends on the age. I personally, and this is kind of funny because I have a child, but I personally have a difficult time holding a conversation with elementary school kids because I'm just a little too sarcastic. I'm constantly joking with kids, and I do this just completely straight-faced. And so all of my fun just kind of goes over their heads. I don't think I'm made for that age. And high school kids, they think my jokes are dumb. They do. They don't find me amusing at all, and they actually find my silliness annoying because by that point, they're kind of over it. You know, the whole too cool. Now, middle school kids, I can win them all over. Every student, every time. So if it's awkward for you to engage with a certain age group, then perhaps you need to work with another. Maybe the grade that you're teaching right now isn't the right grade for you. You know, maybe if you switch, that could make teaching more enjoyable. But overall, if being around kids in any situation lights you up, then that's a good first sign that working in education is the right path for you. All right, next question. Are you a problem solver? Do you have just an amazing work ethic where you commit to something and you see it through no matter what? Are you kind to yourself when you screw up? And do you keep trying? Are you super determined? Or do you tend to place blame rather than problem solve or take responsibility? Now, this isn't obvious, but teaching is hard. It's really gratifying, but oh my goodness, it is hard in the beginning. There will be few times in your career when you feel more like a bumbling idiot than your first couple of years of teaching. But are you the type of person who pushes through obstacles with determination? Is it almost like a competition with yourself to get it right? If you have this drive in you to be better so that your students will benefit, well, then that's another good sign. Are your lessons not working out? You fix it, and maybe you'll do it better next time. Have a class that's out of control? If you're meant to teach, then you end up analyzing the situation and fixing it or getting an expert to come in and help. But if you give up easily and you collapse in complete despair when something goes wrong, that's a red flag. Also, if you find yourself blaming your teaching assignment, your students, their parents, your colleagues, your administrators, etc., how are you going to survive? You have no control over those other factors. Kids, parents, teachers, even admin, they come and go, but the constant is you. So, something to think about. In episode 30, I discuss what you can do when your lessons aren't working. I definitely take time to listen to that and reflect on how you can catch yourself in the midst of a dying lesson before it gets away. All right, next question. Along the same lines, how do you handle criticism, even if it's not delivered in an ideal way? Also, are you reflective? So you need feedback and constructive criticism. This is obvious. I mean, even mean criticism can still be helpful if you reframe it and make it work for you. Sometimes people are wrong in their criticism of something I do, but often it's just a misunderstanding or misinterpretation of what I'm doing. In general, if someone finds something wrong with my teaching, I believe them. I know that sounds weird. I mean, I get offended since I'm only human, and in my mind, I have some choice words for them, but I honestly think about it. I ask other people if they've also noticed that in me. And this is especially when there's someone who is trying to help you, but they just don't know how to say it right. Maybe no matter what comes out of their mouth, it sounds mean. It sounds sarcastic. It sounds like they think you're terrible when they really mean well and they just can't help it. I mean, sometimes it's hard to talk about sensitive things that people need to work on. I mean, as someone who gives constructive criticism as a mentor, I've had to learn along the way how to phrase things so that I can help my mentee be reflective without crushing their soul. But not everyone has that ability or even cares to try to cushion the blow of their words. And look, nobody is above getting criticism. We can all improve. I mean, my classroom is a tightly run ship, but there's definitely things that I know I can improve upon. And honestly, if someone called me out on those, I'd agree with them and I'd ask them for suggestions. I don't need to be the best teacher, but I definitely always want to do better. Now, this topic of handling criticism, I discuss it further in episode 49, which is about how to take feedback so that you don't shut down when you receive it. And I also discuss how to process it so that you don't go into defense mode, but actually take action and improve. All right, next question. Are you willing to ask for help? Not asking for help when you're a new teacher, or not even just a new teacher, a veteran teacher, is the kiss of death. You will fail if you don't lean on your colleagues and their collective expertise. Teaching's hard, right? Very few teacher preparation programs truly prepare you for all the things you need to know. And I'm beginning to think that it's not their fault. There's just so much that you have to learn via trial by fire. And so even if they did try to teach it to you, you wouldn't really get it until you have your own classroom. And this is where asking for help from your colleagues and administrators comes into play, because they're there. They understand the situation that you're in. And of course, every situation is completely different. So you need to lean on them and ask for help so that you can become the best teacher possible. If you try to do this all on your own, you can't see past what you're doing. You don't know what you don't know. And I've actually run into this when I mentor second career teachers, because at that point, when you're a little bit older, you're more confident in yourself and you've experienced a different part of life, meaning you've had another career, you've had to work for a boss, or you know what I mean? And so sometimes they come in feeling like they know everything and they're not necessarily wired to ask for help. And that's a really huge problem. I mean, yes, I can give them some help and some feedback, but I'm not always there. And so when they receive feedback from one of their colleagues, sometimes they bristle at that because they feel like they're being personally attacked. Now, I go in depth in episode 47 about how to get better feedback and help from your colleagues. And I get it. Sometimes we just feel stupid or think we're being a pest when we need help. And this episode goes into how to ask for it so that we get the support we need. And as you know, I'm going to put the links in the show notes so you don't have to remember all these episode numbers. So this next one can be a little bit controversial, but I believe in it. Are you strong-willed? So something that I notice with teachers who have good classroom management is that they just know how to command the room. When kids are getting restless, the teachers don't negotiate with them. They don't hesitate to get things back in order. Now, they're not tyrants, so they're not yelling at the kids necessarily. They just have this presence that commands respect, love, and compliance. And I've noticed that these teachers tend to be strong-willed and are unfazed by the antics of children. You don't see them getting emotional. They're not overly doting and, they're not like, okay, well, that's okay, maybe next time. But at the same time, they also don't frown all the time. They're in control of themselves and their emotions, which means that they're in control of their class. They still smile. They have a great rapport with their students, and somehow they just make it all seem really easy. On the flip side, I've seen more timid or meek teachers just completely get eaten alive. You can tell that they're using these tactics that they've learned in a book or their college prep courses or somewhere online, because it's almost like they're mentally ticking off a list of strategies. Okay, this is your first warning. This is your second warning. Now we go on timeout, and nothing that they're doing is effective because they almost don't even believe in it. They're worried that the student still isn't going to listen or comply when they're misbehaving. And so it's almost like an empty threat. I mean, it's almost like they don't believe in themselves when they give students instruction or an ultimatum to behave. So in turn, their students don't believe it either. I really feel like you have to have a strong personality to make it past those first few years. Lack of classroom management, it leads teachers to quit and just drop out like flies. I mean, how can you accomplish anything if your students are out of control and don't respect you? How can you feel good at the end of the school day if you've been battling students and putting out fires while barely making it through a lesson? Now, if you are more of an introvert, does this mean that you're not going to be successful as a teacher? No, but you have to train yourself to have a really strong and commanding presence in front of your students. You can't be scared of them. You just can't. Just because you maybe don't understand them or you're unsure of yourself and your ability, you have to fake it until you make it. You just have to put on this persona that you know exactly what's going to happen next, that you know what you're doing, and that you have high expectations. And when they're not meeting them, it's not a time to yell. It's a time to be very matter of fact, very much in control. And that takes a stronger personality. So just something to think about. Finally, do you know how to leave? And I mention this because sometimes it seems like teaching is just too unbearable to take when, just a change of scenery could fix the problem. You may have terrible working conditions, unfriendly colleagues, unsupportive administrators, and maybe you're just generally miserable. Many of you are just going to leave based off of that, but I want to tell you, just hold on, you don't have to do that. Sometimes just changing schools will remind you why you got into teaching. When you feel appreciated and supported and you're in a school with a positive climate and culture, you feel like you belong and you thrive even if you have difficult students. This was one of the reasons why I left my previous site. We had ineffective administration, which was causing tensions and creating a huge cloud over the school. I mean, it was almost like there were also factions of people who supported the administration and those who didn't agree with what they were doing. And I just knew that I couldn't function under those conditions, even though I had the support of some amazing friends there. And it was such a difficult decision, you guys, since I was there for 10 years, but I know it was the right decision. And I knew that because upon coming to my current site, I just felt like I could breathe, that I could be creative and flourish without all of the drama and trauma at my previous school. So something to think about too. Have you been in situations that aren't good for you, but you just stick it out because you want to give it another chance? And then maybe 10 chances later, you're still stuck and miserable? I mean, maybe you have had toxic relationships or friendships that you just can't leave, no matter how much it's affecting your mental and physical health. The reason that I ask this is that I'm worried that you'll stay stuck in a school that isn't right for you. And you might think, well, it's better to stay with the devil and maybe you don't want to disappoint or abandon your colleagues. or you're scared of what's out there. But staying in a toxic or dissatisfying site, it's just going to bring you closer to quitting. And I'm sure that it took a lot in you to just even get to this point where you're teaching. It's hard work just to be a teacher. Some of you have to take insane tests just to pass to be a teacher. And so I would hate for you to leave prematurely because of the fact that you're not at a good site. Before you do that, try leaving for another school instead of just leaving teaching completely. I can tell you that it can make a tremendous difference. So I want to thank Melissa for sending me that question. And I want you guys to know that I do respond to all emails, kim@teachersneedteachers.com, or some of you are in the Teachers Need Teachers Facebook group and you DM me with questions, and I've created podcast episodes out of these questions and concerns. So please keep them coming so that I know what it is that you're thinking about and I know what you want me to talk about on the podcast. I love it. I love hearing from you guys. And also don't forget about that free resource. You just have to go to teachersneedteachers.com/EOTY and you can get my quick lesson on taking inventory of your classroom as well as the free resource. And remember, it's a preview of my end of the year Sanity Saver course. And of course, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me today. I know it's a crazy time of the year and I hope you have a fabulous week.
Thanks for listening to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast. Love this episode? Head over to Apple Podcast or Google Play to subscribe, rate, and leave a review.